Imagine you're an app developer.
Okay, I'm with you.
You wake up on a Tuesday, pour your coffee, check your server dashboard, and boom, you see an overnight bill for $82,000.
Oh, man. That is the ultimate nightmare right there.
Right. And it's not because your app magically went viral overnight. It's because a digital key you left in your code like 5 years ago just became a master key for a hacker's AI superweapon.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of chaos we're seeing out there right now.
It's wild. But anyway, welcome to Calm Coding. This is your weekly look at the latest news and stories in the cybersecurity world.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are looking at how the rules of digital defense are just being quietly rewritten overnight. I mean, we've got a stack of fresh research and post-incident reports.
A very tall stack.
Exactly. And the mission for you listening is to help connect the dots across this landscape because it is shifting so much faster than most organizations can even track.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at a really fundamental change in the geometry of cyber attacks.
Like the whole shape of it is changing.
Right. If you pull back and look at the entire landscape right now, from like geopolitical conflicts down to, 18-year-old spreadsheet bugs.
Which we will absolutely get into later.
Oh, yeah, we have to. But the connective tissue between all these things isn't just new malware. It's the speed of execution.
The automation.
Exactly. The automation of discovery and just the raw compute power driving it all. Our goal today is to help you see how these supposedly isolated events actually form one continuous supply chain of modern digital warfare.
So, okay, let's start with the broadest view possible. Nation-state cyber warfare.
The big stuff.
The huge stuff. We are watching massive geopolitical tensions play out in cyberspace, like the current situations involving the US, Iran, Eastern Europe.
It's constantly in the headlines.
Right. But when you actually sit down and read the post-incident reports from these major infrastructure attacks...
The really dense technical one.
Yeah, exactly. The critical failure point usually isn't some untraceable zero-day quantum decryption tool. It's just human hesitation.
Yeah, and that is the really uncomfortable truth of incident response.
Right.
When we analyze these geopolitical conflicts spilling into digital infrastructure, we are mostly looking at advanced persistent threats, or APTs.
APTs, yeah.
And I think the public tends to imagine these attacks like a cinematic bank heist.
Like hackers in hoodies breaking the glass and grabbing the data.
Right, smash and grab.
Yeah.
But the word persistent is the operational reality there. These nation-state-backed groups, they infiltrate a network, and then they just go silent.
They just sit there.
They map the architecture, they harvest credentials, and they essentially live off the land. They mimic normal employee network traffic to avoid triggering alarms.
Wow.
And they might sit there for months or even years.
You know, I always look at it like a termite infestation rather than a burglar.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because the burglar makes noise, right?
Yeah.
But the termites, they just quietly eat the load-bearing beams of your house.
Until the whole thing comes down.
Exactly. You don't know they're there until the floor literally caves in.
We'll look at the forensic data from Ukraine's largest telecom provider, Kyivstar.
Oh, yeah, that was huge.
Right. They suffered a catastrophic disruption in December of 2023. Mobile and internet services were totally knocked out for millions of users. It effectively crippled their communications.
But the breach didn't start in December, did it?
No, not at all. When investigators traced the digital footprints, they found the attackers had actually breached the perimeter back in May of 2023.
May. So wait, they were in there for...
Over 6 months.
Mhm.
They were inside the network, silently mapping the telecom infrastructure for over 6 months before they executed the final wipe.
6 months of dwell time. That's just terrifying.
It really is.
And that brings us to what analysts are calling the execution gap. Because with all the AI security tools we have, why are we still failing at the human communication level?
Well, AI can spot the anomalies instantly, but humans are the ultimate bottleneck.
Because we hesitate.
Right. We see these surveys constantly showing that enterprise companies have security playbooks. They have the giant 3-ring binders on the C-suite desks.
Yeah, gathering dust.
Exactly. But when a breach actually happens, there's this massive gap between the written policy and real-world execution. That's the execution gap.
Okay, so paint a picture of that for me. What does that gap actually look like?
Okay, put yourself in the shoes of a Security Operations Center analyst, a SOC analyst.
Okay, I'm the Alice.
You're working the night shift It's 3 a.m., and your monitoring software flags a highly anomalous data transfer moving out of an internal server.
So the AI did its job.
The AI did its job perfectly. You follow the playbook, you flag it. But this is where the human bottleneck begins. Because if the organization hasn't drilled its communication protocols in a live fire exercise, you, the analyst, are totally paralyzed.
Right, because if I just yank the cord and shut down the server and it turns out to be a false positive,
You might just take down the company's entire e-commerce backend during a global promotion.
and I'm fired. So the fear of breaking production basically outweighs the fear of a hypothetical breach.
Precisely. You don't want to wake up the vice president at 3 a.m. if you don't absolutely have to.
I mean, who would?
Exactly. So the decision bounces from the SOC to middle management to legal to executive leadership, and then finally back down.
That sounds like a lot of Zoom calls.
Oh, easily 4 hours of debate. And in those 4 hours, the attackers have noticed that they've triggered an alarm.
Oh, wow. So they know you're watching.
Right. And they instantly deploy their ransomware payloads across the entire network before the defenders even finish their meeting.
That is brutal.
The technology is useless if the human beings lack the practice authority to isolate the system immediately. Good security requires constant simulation, not just static playbooks.
Okay, so if human hesitation in a crisis is a critical vulnerability, the flip side of that coin has to be systemic long-term human neglect.
Oh, absolutely.
And there is no better example of this than the recent alert from the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency,
Lisa.
the Excel bug. Yes. Okay, let's unpack this. Because they just issued a mandate for federal agencies to patch a vulnerability tracked as CVE-2009-0238.
2009.
Yeah, that 2009 is not a typo. That is an 18-year-old Microsoft Excel vulnerability that is currently actively being exploited.
I mean, what's fascinating here is that 18-year timeline isn't just an embarrassing statistic. It's actually a goldmine for attackers because of how this specific flaw works.
This is like leaving your front door key under the exact same fake plastic rock for 18 years and then being shocked when someone finally turns the lock.
That's pretty much it. The vulnerability allows for remote code execution, or RCE.
RCE, right.
To visualize how this functions mechanically, imagine the software's memory allocation is a giant, highly secure hotel.
Okay, I'm checking in.
So a threat actor sends a crafted, malicious Excel document. When the victim opens the file, the document tells the system to deliver a package to room 999.
Okay.
But room 999 doesn't exist. It's an invalid object.
And a modern program would just say, error, room doesn't exist, and shut down the request.
Right, exactly. Modern software fails safely. But in older legacy software, like Excel 2007, when the system gets confused looking for that non-existent room, it doesn't fail safely.
What does it do?
It essentially drops all its security protocols in confusion as the memory buffer overflows.
It just panics.
It panics. And in that split second of system panic, the attacker slips their own custom malicious instructions into the hotel's main computer. They basically take over the entire building.
That blows my mind. But what really gets me is the list of affected software here.
Yeah.
We are talking about Microsoft Office Excel 2000.
2000.
Excel 2003, Excel 2007. There is even a warning for Excel for Mac 2004 and 2008.
Yeah, it's a throwback.
The fact that CISA had to mandate agencies to patch this by April 28th means that right now there are critical federal systems still running software from before the iPhone was invented.
Yep.
I mean, how does a massive enterprise even end up with an Excel 2003 machine still connected to the internet?
It highlights the terrifying reality of legacy infrastructure. It's what we call the factory floor problem.
The factory floor problem.
Yeah. Massive organizations often have dedicated legacy machines that serve one highly specific purpose.
Like what?
You might have a terminal in a shipping warehouse that prints a very specific barcode, or a computer hooked up to a multi-million-dollar CNC machine that only interfaces with Windows XP.
Oh, wow. So you literally can't upgrade it without breaking the expensive hardware.
Exactly. The IT department knows it's outdated, but the business unit refuses to upgrade it because, hey, it still works.
Right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But threat actors love this. They know that while the security team is obsessing over next-generation zero-day exploits on the cloud servers, that neglected 2007 machine is just sitting in a supply closet.
Quietly holding the keys to the entire internal network.
Precisely. It only takes one neglected machine to compromise a modern network.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The scary part is that attackers are no longer relying on human patience to find those dusty old machines, are they?
No, not at all. The paradigm is entirely shifted.
Right, because if legacy networks relied on attackers taking weeks to manually discover them, that buffer is completely gone. Hackers are weaponizing cutting-edge AI to automate the whole discovery and exploitation phase.
Yeah, we recently reviewed a deep security report from Gambit. It detailed a campaign where a single threat actor breached 9 different Mexican government agencies,
9 agencies.
and they leaked hundreds of millions of citizen records. But the core mechanism of this attack wasn't some guy typing manually. It was heavily utilizing AI, specifically Claude Code and GPT 4.1.
Okay, I want to make sure we don't gloss over this
Yeah.
because when people hear AI hacking, they usually think of like ChatGPT writing a slightly more convincing phishing email with better grammar.
Right, like fixing a typo.
Yeah. But that is not what happened here. This attacker used AI to map unfamiliar government systems, ingest the architecture, and write custom exploits dynamically in hours instead of days.
Yeah, the Gambit report noted that roughly 75% of all the remote command execution activity in this attack was generated and executed by Claude Code.
75%.
The attacker built a custom 17,550-line Python tool,
Wow.
and its sole purpose was to act as a pipeline. It would take raw, messy data harvested from the compromised servers, pipe it through OpenAI's API, and have the large language model parse it to find vulnerabilities and structure the data.
Wait, 17,000 lines of code just to manage the AI requests?
Yes. They use this automated pipeline to generate 2,597 highly structured intelligence reports.
That's insane.
And this was across 305 internal servers. The AI was looking at raw server logs and instantly translating them into clear maps of where the valuable data lived and what commands to run next.
So it's making the decisions.
Basically, all told, the automated setup executed over 5,300 commands across 34 live sessions.
It's staggering. I mean, going back to our earlier point about the execution gap and human hesitation, defenders usually rely on the ODA loop, right?
Observe, orient, decide, act.
Exactly. They assume it will take a human attacker a certain number of days to map a network and escalate privileges.
They bank on that lag time.
Right, that lag time gives the defense time to detect the anomaly and react. But here, the AI operates entirely inside the defender's OD loop. It's doing the work of an entire team of human hackers just instantly.
And that compression of the attack timeline is the fundamental threat here. Defenders relying on standard response windows stand no chance against AI speed attacks.
Because it's too fast.
The moment the initial breach occurs, the AI has mapped the network, found the database, and initiated the exfiltration before the SOC analyst has even, poured their coffee.
But, that level of automation creates a new logistical problem for the attacker. Well, generating 5,000 custom commands and parsing thousands of intelligence reports through an LLM requires massive processing power.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just run a localized superintelligence on a stolen laptop. They need enterprise-level AI access to pull this off. And if you're a hacker, you probably don't want to put your personal credit card down for a ChatGPT enterprise account.
Definitely not.
So we arrive at this new black market, stealing the API keys to the AI infrastructure itself.
And the AI supply chain is currently facing a massive wave of credential theft.
Tell me about this CloudSec research.
Right, so a recent investigation by CloudSec uncovered a systemic flaw in how mobile apps manage these credentials. They found 32 exposed Google API keys hard-coded across 22 different Android apps.
And these aren't just like obscure student projects.
Not at all. We are talking about major platforms. The OIO hotel booking app, Google Pay for Business, and ELSA Speak, which is an AI language learning app.
Wow.
Combined, these applications had an install base of over 500 million users.
500 million. But wait, I read the postmortem on this, and the most frustrating part to me is that the developers didn't actually do anything malicious or inherently negligent.
Right.
They literally followed Google's official legacy guidance.
Yeah, and that is what makes this a structural crisis, rather than just developer error.
Okay, explain that.
For years, it was standard practice to embed API keys for basic, low-level services like Google Maps or Firebase directly into the public-facing client code of a mobile app.
Because it was just a map, right?
Exactly. Under the old cloud architecture, those keys were basically just public identifiers. They just let the app talk to the map server. The worst a hacker could do if they found that key was maybe run up your map's ratting quota.
Right.
They weren't considered highly sensitive authentication tokens.
It's as if years ago you handed out a key to your garden gate so your neighbor could borrow a lawnmower. And today, without telling you, the bank decided the exact same key suddenly opens the vault to your life savings.
That's a perfect analogy for how cloud identity and access management functions when new services are rolled out.
I am.
Right. Google attached their new Gemini AI infrastructure to the exact same centralized cloud project ecosystem. Because of how permissions cascade in these environments, those old, quote-unquote, non-sensitive public maps keys were suddenly elevated.
Oh, man.
They became live, highly privileged authentication tokens capable of querying Gemini AI.
So threat actors are basically running automated scripts to scrape the code of popular Android apps, grabbing these old legacy keys and using them to run their massive, unlimited Gemini AI requests for free.
For free for them, yes.
Yeah.
But the financial fallout for the developers is catastrophic.
Yeah, let's talk about the bills.
It is instant financial ruin for some of these folks. One solo developer was hit with a $15,400 bill practically overnight.
A solo dev, that's devastating.
A Japanese enterprise company lost roughly $128,000 to unauthorized Gemini API usage.
128,000.
And that was despite having firewall IP restrictions in place, because the API calls bypassed the traditional network perimeter.
Unbelievable.
A development team in Mexico saw an $82,314 spike in just 48 hours. That's a 455 times increase over their normal cloud spend.
And it isn't just a financial drain, is it? Because these keys grant broad access to the Gemini infrastructure and the associated cloud buckets.
Right. The researchers found that user data was exposed too.
Yeah, in the case of the ALSA Speak app, highly sensitive user-submitted audio files could be accessed and extracted via the Gemini Files API.
Which raises an important question about backward compatibility in the cloud era. The rules of what constitutes a sensitive identifier changed completely overnight when AI was attached to the same infrastructure.
The playing field was entirely replaced.
Exactly. They followed the established playbooks, but the ground shifted underneath them.
So this massive global demand to run AI models, whether for legitimate apps or malicious hacking, this all brings us to the raw physical foundation of it all: compute power.
The raw silicon.
Right. You cannot run artificial intelligence without specialized hardware. And the race to hoard and deploy that compute capacity is rapidly becoming a major geopolitical issue.
Oh, it's becoming the defining geopolitical arms race of this decade.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang recently spoke about this. He did an in-depth interview on the Dwarkesh Patel podcast.
Yeah, that was a fascinating conversation.
And he issued a very nuanced but firm warning about the state of global compute capacity, specifically focusing on China. Now, I want to be clear for you listening, we're just impartially reporting Han's viewpoint here. We're not taking any political sides. We just want to share his perspective on the hardware reality.
Right, and it's a fascinating engineering reality.
Because we know the U.S. has put severe export restrictions on the absolute highest-end AI chips to China. But Huang's point was that this doesn't mean China is out of the compute race. He brought up this concept of ghost data centers.
Yes, the ghost data centers. Huang pointed out that while China might be restricted from buying the newest, state-of-the-art H100 Nvidia chips, they manufacture a massive percentage of the world's standard chip hardware.
Right, the baseline stuff.
Right, and they have an enormous amount of unused baseline compute capacity. He likened them to China's infamous ghost cities. You know, those entire metropolitan areas built with infrastructure but no residents.
Oh, wow. So he suggested they have ghost data centers running on older, heavily available hardware. Just visualize that for a second. Entirely dark rooms, massive warehouses, fully hooked up to industrial power grids, servers racked and humming, just waiting for the software command to wake up and start churning out machine learning models.
It's a striking image.
But wait, how do you train a next-generation AI if you only have older, less efficient chips? Don't you hit a physical limit at some point?
That is the core engineering challenge. But it is solvable. It all comes down to networking.
Networking.
If you don't have one incredibly fast superchip, you have to cluster thousands of slightly older, weaker chips together to act as one brain.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the bottleneck isn't the chips themselves, it's the latency. The delay in communication between those thousands of chips as they try to share data during the training process.
Because they have to talk to each other constantly.
Exactly. Connecting them efficiently requires incredibly complex networking architecture. like high-speed InfiniBand or advanced Ethernet setups.
So Huang is essentially saying that if they solve that networking latency problem, they can just gang up more chips to compensate for the lack of individual chip speed.
Precisely. Because they manufacture so much of the hardware, they can easily gang up more chips. With enough power and enough older chips, they can brute force the training of next-generation models.
Wow.
Models that could potentially rival the absolute cutting edge of what Western companies are producing, like Anthropic's Claude Mythos.
Which is currently heavily utilized for defensive cybersecurity via Project Glasswing, right?
Okay. Yes. Or specialized variants, like OpenAI's GPT 5.4-Cyber. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the hardware is abundantly available. It's just a matter of who points that compute capacity at the next major cybersecurity breakthrough.
It's important to note the tone Huang used, though. As you said, he wasn't banging the drums of war or suggesting a total technological blockade.
No, not at all.
He actually advocated for keeping a dialogue open. He pointed out that China has some of the leading AI researchers and universities in the world, and treating them purely as a locked-out adversary might not be the safest long-term path.
Right.
He suggested that research collaboration is essential, noting that we should, quote, try to both agree on what not to use the AI for, end quote.
It is a highly pragmatic view from someone who understands the supply chain better than anyone. You can restrict the top-tier chips, but the raw silicon and the electricity are already in place. The ghost data centers are plugged in.
The power is flowing.
Exactly. The global focus has to shift from trying to put the genie back in the bottle to actually managing the reality of decentralized global compute power.
It is incredible to trace the through line of how all these elements connect today.
It really is all connected.
We started by looking at the human execution gap, how our own hesitation in the SoC allows threats to establish a foothold.
The termites in the walls.
Right. We saw how systemic neglect leaves 18-year-old memory bugs sitting in the dark corners of enterprise networks, just waiting for a malicious package to crash the hotel.
Room 999.
Exactly. We explored how threat actors are no longer manually searching for those bugs. They are building 17,000-line Python scripts to let AI map and exploit those systems in minutes.
Total automation.
And we uncovered how the massive cost of running that AI has created a black market for ancient Google Maps keys that suddenly hold the power to rack up six-figure Gemini bills.
Bankrupting developers.
Yeah. And all of it ladders up to the looming shadow of international ghost data centers, quietly waiting in China, capable of brute forcing the next generation of digital warfare.
It really proves that cybersecurity is no longer just an IT problem. It's a critical reality of global infrastructure.
Absolutely.
It touches the geopolitical maneuvering of nation-states, the physical manufacturing of silicon, and the bank account of a solo app developer in Mexico.
Every layer is connected.
Every single layer.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to ponder.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
If AI is already capable of autonomously mapping networks and dynamically writing its own custom exploits to bypass human defenders,
Did you know it is?
and if hackers are actively scraping the web to steal the very compute power needed to fuel these models, and massive national-scale data centers are just waiting to be unleashed, how far away are we from a cyber war where AI agents are both the attackers and the defenders? A scenario where algorithms fight at light speed over stolen API keys and clustered hardware, leaving human beings as mere spectators to a war we can no longer process fast enough to fight.
That is the reality we are accelerating toward. And it's moving fast.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us today and for bringing your curiosity to the table. We will see you next time on Calm Coding.